Good morning, America. Not morning, like evening, but whatever. Welcome, welcome. It's the best night of the year, as always. The debate night. I guess usually there's multiple, but it's probably just gonna be one this time. Let's be real. It's amazing we got Trump to agree once. Unfortunately, RFK dropped out. I know. It's very sad. So, after he endorsed Trump, he came to me and he was like, Amelia, you could take over my ticket. I need someone to do this real debate thing again. And I was like, RFK, I'm with you. I got it. Don't worry. I'll do it. I will debate the fuck out of these bitches. I have so many worms in my brain too, and so many bears I left in Central Park. I fucking got this. And he like shook my hand and kind of fell over. But he does that a lot. So, here we are. And yes, I did work a lot on this overlay. I spent like an hour on it, but I think it's amazing. I think this is the best overlay stream thing I've ever done in my life. You can see your chat at the top. We got the debate thing. I literally just like took a screenshot of RFK's debate stream because I think it's really funny. And like modified it from there. So we would have like my website would say like therealdebate.com, but I changed it to, you know, to me. I changed a few of the text around. I added the top banner for the chat. I thought, I need to have like a horizontally scrolling chat. Like a headline, like the correspondence coming in, you know? That's what I did. President Biden just looking like he wasn't there. And so here we are. So the physical activity on the 9 p.m. ET. The debate starts. It's 8:45 p.m. now. I might need to move the mic a little bit. I might need to like make myself a little bigger, put myself a little higher. The mic kind of blocks my face a little bit. Hello. And third, a little self-deprecating humor. Hello. That doesn't hurt. It's nice to know that the person. I got the Constitution background that they have like for all the fucking debates. And so those three elements are really critical to I'm excited. I've been very excited for this today. Change yourself. Like part because I put so much effort into this overlay. I think it's amazing, and also because I'm finally gonna get a debate that like at least someone can say something, like a sentence. That's exciting. I didn't expect to have that this year. I thought like we were over. You know, we had all the debates of people who could speak sentences for America's history. You know, we were done. But now we're getting Kamala, who I'm not a fan of. But like, at least, you know, makes for a better debate for the candidates to be able to speak sentences. It's usually considered like a pretty bare minimum part of the job, being a presidential candidate or a human being, one might say, if you want to go farther. So I'm going to be interested in finding out how she manages. And she hasn't. I don't know. I don't know how loud these guys are on the stream. I don't really care about what they're talking about right now. This was the only stream that had 1080p. This is NBC's stream. But I think if ABC's was only 720p. It's fucking 2024. What are they doing? Should be president of the United States. Senator Craig and Greg. What was I saying? Good to have both of you with us. Not easy, right? I'm excited. Not easy at all, but nice to have your perspective. I'm expecting it to be. I don't know. I haven't really thought much about the debate itself, I guess, because we didn't know if it was actually even going to happen. You thought like Trump said like he didn't want to do it. He was like Kamala, more like Lamala. which I hate. I feel him on that one, but
Lester, first of all, without triggering you, what do you remember?
Without triggering you, what the fuck are these people talking about?
2016.
I remember how lonely I felt because we were
the 2016 was a good year for debates because, or just like a political cycle in general. Like result-wise aside, in terms we had a full fucking slate of Republican candidates and actual competition on the Democratic side. We also had we also had a full slate of candidates on the Democratic side, didn't we? At least at the start, I think. It eventually it narrowed down pretty quick, I think, but
it's not an easy task.
Oh, it's definitely not.
I don't remember who was it. There was Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley. If anyone remembers Martin O'Malley, is that gonna still let me see the tabs? No. Okay. And Bernie Sanders. And did they say Hillary Clinton already? No one really cares about her anymore.
Half of the American people. So you want the
I don't
questions to
care.
be understandable, digestible.
Martin O'Malley. He was there for like a minute. No one gave a shit. 2020, we had a much more, we had a much larger pool of candidates. In the 2016 Republican debates, we had like, what's this one? Republican debate. They had so many people. It was insane. Like, yeah, like they had 10, 12. I don't fucking know. It's a lot of them.
And there is a question of how much tonight, as we bring it back to
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 fucking candidates. It's like a fucking Danganronpa class trial.
We know from past debates that the former president does say things that are not true on this stage.
And then in the fucking
who say if she spent the night fact
I don't care. I don't need to see the chat.
So she's got to pick her moments in that.
And then in
also seeing, even as we've been on the air tonight,
the main debates, the general election debates, they got to like walk around and stuff, and we got to see Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump go at it, and somehow fucking Hillary end up losing. Well, that part I guess wasn't surprising, but more so like that Hillary Clinton, that they gave the nomination to her. I mean, that also wasn't surprising, but like you get what I mean.
You've got to feel the room, and it took me several minutes to feel the room, feel the temperature.
They aren't going to be able to walk around for this debate. I believe they're having their mics muted. Let's look up the rules.
A long time ago, I would never publicly judge a debate moderator. It is an incredibly difficult job, and my hat's off to anyone who has done it.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is NBC.
Tune out any criticism
Who's this?
heading into the big night.
But you know exactly what their
I
stomachs
don't know who that
feel like.
is.
10 minutes away from the debate now.
OMG, my boy. RFK. In the spin room? What's the spin room? Is that like the media room or something? Rules. They playing ads or something? It's fine. Here we go. Yeah, this is probably gonna be the only debate, which is kind of sad. No live audience, no opening statements. 2 minutes to answer questions, 2 minutes for rebuttals, and an additional minute for follow-ups and clarifications. The two candidates will also have up to 2 minutes to deliver closing statements at the end. The debate will last 90 minutes and will include 2 commercial breaks. Isn't 2 commercial breaks a bit much? I mean, I feel like a debate should be like 2 hours. I feel that way with 2 movies as well. 90 minutes isn't really that long at all. They aren't allowed to take pre-written notes or props on stage. I feel like I could probably have some notes. I feel like that's fine. Let's see. The Harris campaign requested a change to allow open mics. Okay, in the end they agreed to mute microphones, I guess, like after their 2 minutes are up or whatever the fuck. Yeah, I don't know what props would mean. Like, maybe one of them wanted to bring like a dead baby on stage. Like that one guy. I watched like a Channel 5 video recently where they interviewed this guy who like had like brought like a fetus baby and like shoved it in front of Bill Clinton's face while he was president. as like a protest against abortion. That's fucking wild. Debate, yeah, okay. Podium placement. That's silly. Why the fuck does it matter?
What is going to happen now?
Back and forth, President Trump.
Oh, yeah, this is it.
The anchor for America. Wow, Lester Holt, the GOAT. They have Steve Kornacki, who's cool.
Welcome back.
I don't think I care about any of the anchors. I mean, they're fucking news station anchors. Why would anyone give a shit about them?
Just minutes from now, it'll be the first time Harris and Trump meet each other, and it'll be in front of the entire country tonight. Also,
They never met each other before.
The campaign less than 2 months out from election day.
Kamala Harris did shit in the debate. In her debate, she went in.
Go back to the debate hall in Philadelphia.
We have a few minutes, so if I can, I would like to. What the fuck is that video? What's that doing there? I think Kamala Harris, Tulsi Gabbard. This was considered the campaign-ending moment in 2020 for Kamala Harris. If I can find like a short clip of it, maybe like. This is 40 seconds. That one's a bit short. Come on, we're losing time. Oh god. A clip. Debate. Maybe this is it. Maybe this will work.
We have someone on the stage who is attempting to be the Democratic nominee for President of the United States, who during the Obama administration spent 4 years full-time on Fox News criticizing President Obama.
Tulsi Gabbard is a fucking weird one.
Who has spent full-time criticizing people on this stage.
I don't know what her deal is. Well, I do, but like,
when Donald Trump was elected,
fucking silly if she was ever up here, honestly.
Buddied up to Steve Bannon to get a meeting with Donald Trump in the Trump Tower, fails to call a war criminal by what he is as a war criminal, and then spends full time during the course of this campaign, again, criticizing the Democratic Party. What we need on the stage,
and we've seen plenty of what fucking Donald Trump is like in debates.
who has the ability to win, and by that we need someone on that stage who has the ability to go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump, and someone who has the ability to rebuild the Obama coalition and bring the party and the nation together. I believe I am that candidate.
Thank you, Senator. Congresswoman Gabbard, I'll give you a chance to respond.
What Senator Harris is doing.
I mean, she's done a surprisingly good job at unifying the party, but she still fucking sucks.
Smears and innuendos because she cannot challenge the substance of the argument that I'm making, the leadership and the change that I'm seeking to bring in our foreign policy, which only makes me guess that she will, as president, continue the status quo, continue the Bush-Clinton-Trump foreign policy of regime change wars, which is deeply destructive. This is personal to me because I served in Iraq. I left my seat in the
I don't think this is the clip I was looking for, but we'll take it.
To Iraq, where I served in a medical unit, where every single day I saw the terribly high human cost of war. I take very seriously the responsibility that the president has to serve as commander-in-chief, to lead our armed forces, and to make sure always, no, I'm not going to put party interests first. I will put the interests of the American people above all else.
Congresswoman. I want to briefly give Senator Harris a final second to respond.
I believe that what our nation needs right now is a nominee who can speak to
like she dropped out. I don't know if it was early. It was fairly early. I think it was definitely long before the primaries started, I believe. No one wanted to vote for her. And now she is the fucking nominee, and not by votes. Not by votes. It was a fucking. It was a very boring pick for Biden. There was no like political diversity in the pick, really. it was just have a black woman who's younger on the ticket to balance it out,
of coming off
and that was pretty much it.
Absolutely. When I've spoken to
And now we
allies who are
have to
close
fucking
her,
deal
they
with
say
her as a
biggest challenge
presidential
tonight
candidate.
is getting
I don't fucking want
specific,
to.
but not too specific. She's got to tell the story of how a Harris administration would differ from a Biden administration. That word we keep using.
I don't think it would
Change.
differ.
How would she change things right now?
Yeah, I don't think she is representative of any change at all. We're basically forced into voting for another 8 years of Biden politics.
What she wants to see. Yes, she's going to prosecute the case against Donald Trump on a range of
Which is
different
fucking
issues. She'll accuse him
stupid.
of switching his
Because
opinion,
it's not like we're going to get a primary the next time around in 4 years if she gets elected this time.
Yeah, but she also has to answer for some changes in her own position.
Which
Of course,
is
she ran
fucking
for president
insane.
in 2020. She came across and positioned herself as a much more progressive type of candidate. Now she's
I think she
to the middle here in a general election.
originally
primary, right back in 2019, 2020. She has moved away from that on issues like
endorsed
for example,
Medicare for
mandating
all,
gun buybacks for automatic rifles.
I
Something that
think.
she no longer supports.
And then she walked that
Fracking, for
back,
example,
even
something
like
that
within
she,
the
has changed
even
her
within
position on
like
as well. You look
the
at Medicare for all,
the
a position
primary.
she's backed away from.
There you go,
Watch for the
right
former
there.
president to try to go after some of these issues.
Fucking
And I'll tell
ridiculous.
you, to bring it back to the voters, that panel with Kate Snow is super interesting.
God forbid we have something.
Came up again and
We
again.
need
And even in
extreme
December, for the first
change
time, inflation dipped
because
below 3%
America is
for the first
extremely
time since
broken.
March. Feel
Yeah,
great
it's
about it
like God forbid we get
right now.
something
So
like
how
that,
does
you know?
Vice President Harris address that moving forward too?
Oh, we're about to go in it.
We were focusing on Joe Biden. Is that something that folks will be watching carefully?
He's now, of course, the older candidate now.
Okay, we will be back with you. It's the top of the hour now, 9 o'clock on the East Coast here in New York and in Philadelphia, the room where it's about to happen. We're just seconds away now from tonight's
Like the room
first
where it
and perhaps
happened.
last
It's just like
presidential
Hamilton.
debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump.
As we've noted, this will be the first time these candidates have met in person, and it's happening on a debate stage. Also, the first.
Okay, so
debate
it
since
is just a
President
flat
Biden
out the
left
first
race
time they will
over
ever
the
meet.
summer, and Harris became the Democratic nominee.
That kind of
A lot has
surprises me.
happened in a very compressed period of time.
Yes, it has, and we have a few moments until the debate starts.
I mean,
We will
usually
join it.
presidents
ABC
meet
News
each other
is
during the
broadcasting
transition
it, but we will
period,
simulcast it right here in its entirety.
you know,
It's taking
of
place
administrations.
at the
But Trump
National
just didn't do
Constitution
that.
Center
Trump was
in
just like,
Philadelphia.
fuck you
In
guys.
June's debate, there will be no
Tried to
audience
kill them.
tonight. The candidates' microphones will be muted while the other one is talking. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for answers. There will be closing statements, but no opening statements. So we expect them to probably mix it up rather early in this as they stake out their positions and we get a sense of where all this is going.
And the mics are muted when the other is talking. So let's take you to Philadelphia now and the first presidential debate of 2024.
Oh boy.
Viewer, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less
I
than 2
doubt
months
it.
away.
I doubt
For
this
Vice
debate will
President
have
Kamala
that much
Harris, this is her
impact,
first
frankly.
debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st.
I think it can have a lot of impact for Kamala, but not a lot for Trump. Like best case scenario, I don't think Trump can gain any support here. I think Kamala could lose support or gain support pretty heavy.
The candidates will have 2 minutes to
Because I
answer
think a lot of
questions, and this
people,
is the
because
clock.
Kamala has just been a vice president, there was no primary debates or anything. A lot of people aren't entirely sure what Kamala stands for. And I think that includes me, and I think that includes everyone, because we frankly just do not fucking know exactly all the details of her shit, because she never had the campaign for this.
Two candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the
No,
coin
I don't
toss. He
expect
chose
Trump to
move
lose
in
any
the final
support,
closing
because he's
statement of the
already
evening.
lost
Vice
everything he
President
could
Harris
lose,
went to the
basically.
podium to the right.
I do not think she will be able to lose much.
Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Are they gonna handshake? Why is Trump walking like that? I think he's trying to
Let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
have fun.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you both.
Have a good debate versus have
We are
fun.
looking forward
That's
to
a
spirited and
contrast.
thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their number one issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid. And I'm
Okay,
actually
what does that
the
have to do
only
with
person
anything?
on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people.
This
And
has
that is
nothing to do with the
why
question.
I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing. And the cost of housing is too expensive for far too
She's
many
just
people.
taking this as just a
We know that
general,
young
let me
families
say my
need
economic
support
policy.
to raise their children, and I intend on extending
Which is fine, I
a
guess.
tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner.
I am glad to see someone who looks alive on the debate stage, and it's funny contrast to Trump brooding next to her, just kind of staring off to the dishes
My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax
she looks
would
like a
actually
guitar.
result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
That feels
no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that.
like the typical Democratic rhetoric for recent times, but maybe a little bit better. A little bit better, I would say.
And the tariff will be
we definitely need the
substantial
housing
because
issues
they took in
addressed.
billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation.
The economy is rarely
probably the worst in our nation's history.
Well, here, I'm gonna let him talk.
21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums.
The economy is rarely affected immediately by policies presidents put in place. It's been 2 decades of Democrats cleaning up of bad economies that have been the results of Republicans.
Towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio.
And not to mention COVID and shit, which certainly wasn't, Biden's fault or anything.
Going in violently. These are the people.
If anything, it was, one could say Trump's response made it a lot worse.
And they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border security.
Yeah, he did. He did. He did play more golf than anyone, didn't he? I remember that. I remember those charts.
Talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left
What, did he just ask her for a follow-up? I think that was.
Since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes
Democrats,
of the American people.
like,
I'm going to tell you on
I
this
feel like
debate
so
tonight,
rarely, you
you're gonna
know,
hear
in the past
from
few
the same old
decades,
tired playbook,
get to actually
a bunch
do
of
their own
lies,
shit that
grievances,
isn't just
and
cleaning
name
up of
calling.
Republicans'
What you're
messes.
going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected
I'm
again.
glad that's gotten its way into
I
the
believe
mainstream
very
knowledge of that.
strongly that the American people
Because that
want a
is
president
insane
who
and has been
understands the
public for like a year
importance
now
of
at
bringing us
least.
together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates
If not a
us.
few, I think.
And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025.
It's such a
I haven't read it. I don't want to read
stupid
it purposely. I'm not
statement.
going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas. I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody
It's
knows I'm an
fucking
open book. Everybody
insane.
knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible.
This is
And
the guy
people
that
give me
told
credit
people
for
to like
rebuilding the military.
inject
They give me
fucking
credit
bleach in
for
their
a lot of
veins,
things,
right?
but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic.
Or was
But
that
the only jobs they got were
Bolsonaro?
bounce back jobs. These were jobs
No, it was
that
Trump.
bounced back, and it bounced back, and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy.
Yeah, there was ivermectin. I think people still do that shit.
Not the world have
Like all
reviewed our
Republicans were
relative
fucking behind that
plans
one.
for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse. Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and
like
where we stand on the issues. And
it's
I
like
invite
yeah,
you
it's
to
like oh
know
yeah, I got the
that
vaccine
Donald
that's
Trump
so
actually
fast,
has no
Operation
plan for
Warp
you
Speed.
because
I
he's
did
more
this shit,
interested
but
in
also
defending
by the
himself
way,
than he
actually
is
maybe
looking
like
out
just
for you.
inject bleach in your veins instead. That's actually cool.
Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value.
And
as a country.
Fauci
It's
was
gonna make
like
people wanna
constantly
be able to
fucking
go and
having to like work
and
against
create
Trump.
jobs and
Like
create a lot of good,
God knows
solid
Trump
money
like
for
was
our-
trying to
for
fucking
our
obstruct
country.
that dude
And
in
just to
every
finish off,
every fucking
she
step of the
doesn't
way.
have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences
What?
that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something
That
you
was
both
hilarious.
The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication.
I'm not too familiar with the logistics and economics of tariffs, but that makes sense to me. That I can, yeah, that would make sense for prices going up here.
China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, you know, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country, because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal.
That might be an exaggeration.
Or anything else. The people of our country are.
I think 2008 was worse.
They've destroyed
not
the economy.
necessarily
And all you have to do is look at
inflation-wise.
the polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is, under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century.
A lot more restrictions on China over the past 4 years, which is kind of weird when you think about how Trump is supposed to be like, against China.
Focusing on what we need to
be hard on China. That's how he says it.
So that we don't end up having
tough on China.
The short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point.
Did I pronounce it Xi?
That Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics.
Well, is that
and he taught her well. But when you
is that
look at
NAFTA?
what she's done
No.
to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country
I don't remember
monthly,
what that thing
where
was.
it's, I believe 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21.
I remember that happened.
That's
though.
bigger than New York
I think
State.
it was. I remember there was like
And
a
just
few
look at what
things
they're doing
about
to our
that were
country.
weird.
They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals, and that's bad for our economy too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has.
Oh, that acronym doesn't sound familiar to me.
With policy that's insane, almost policy that you say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade.
I'll have to read
last
about
year.
this
You said
after.
that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban, because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore,
It's not about changing the position as for why they should trust him.
The plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous.
Is he going to
governor
talk
of
about the
West Virginia,
post-birth
not the current
abortions?
governor's doing an excellent job. But the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical.
I can't believe he went with this line again.
Vice presidential
She's
pick,
ready.
which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something...
This is like the most important topic of this election, probably, in terms of like something that will directly move the needle of so many votes. She is ready to pounce, and she definitely needs to nail this.
We were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans.
Who cares about what Ronald Reagan would? What does that have to do with anything?
We were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote.
Well, I'm hoping that it won't go, it shouldn't go like uncontested like it did with Biden, where he doesn't have the fucking mind to like be able to contest things quickly or like address things properly.
To kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President
Thank
Trump.
you.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care in one state that provides prison for life.
Not a bad time to call for Supreme Court reform either.
What that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice President.
Good response.
Well, there she goes again.
Went on what she needed to.
I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban, because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats.
That's such bullshit. It's always like pushing the goalposts. Like it will always.
And it may take a little time.
It'll always only be the next step until we get to the next step. And actually, it's the next step.
Apart. and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible.
And it is insane how they fucking want to monitor women's menstrual cycles. And I was going to say that having a woman candidate is probably
I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter.
the right thing for the moment. With abortion being such an issue, and I noticed it when
two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress.
When she was talking about how she talked to so many women who were scared of this,
especially now with 50-50, essentially 50-50.
it comes across way better from her than from an old man.
Come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get.
You know, it comes off as she's also fighting for herself here, which she is. You know.
And then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. in all fairness.
Won't say it.
J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because
why are you avoiding it so much, dude? It's kind of weird.
They got close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and
it's such a ridiculous notion.
Abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening
Roe v. Wade getting overturned was such a horrible day for America. Like, I remember just like the dread I felt and like just how dreary everything was, and talking to friends about it, and we were just all we could, you know, be like just like, what the fuck do we do, you know? What the fuck is there to do?
What you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body.
One of the worst days for America in recent history, I think.
Where this issue has been on the ballot in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing...
I am a leader on fertilization.
You should ask.
Yeah, me too, buddy.
Will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v.
Answer
Wade,
the question.
Why won't you? Okay.
to do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the
Probably.
former governor of
We'll probably
Virginia.
know.
The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump,
What is this shit he's talking about? Let me look it
And
up.
border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised.
Man, we're never going to get over the war on drugs.
Really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer.
I've been to one. I've been to one.
Is that people start
it's an
leaving
interesting
his rallies
time.
early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him
I
talk
won't
about
say
is
you leave early out of boredom. It's a pretty amusing experience.
And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who
exhaustion
actually puts you
though,
first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as the rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase: make America great again. She's
here from yesterday. J.D. Vance spreads a xenophobic, racist conspiracy theory about Haitian immigrants eating pets. Wow. Wow, that's a new one.
Here you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals.
Loved adding some fact checking here.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says
yeah, it certainly is terrifying, but like, what can you really do at this point but laugh, you know?
Talk about extreme.
We're fucked.
You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain, including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress
which is
member
fucking
Liz
crazy.
Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit.
Hey, I have contempt for the United States, for the Constitution.
Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people who's were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they? But
what does that mean?
Done such a poor job. And they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier.
Joe
so let's
Biden
get back to your deportation
votes?
proposal that the vice president has reacted to.
Might technically be right. He might have gotten more votes than like the prior president because our population has gone up. But I think Joe Biden got one over him.
No problem using the U.S. military. You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants?
Also, Hillary Clinton got more votes than him.
Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah. It is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed
We're not sending their best.
street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow, and I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it. Because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in. And all over the world, crime is down. All over the world except here. Crime here is up and through
Isn't
the
crime
roof.
also down
Despite
here?
their fraudulent
I believe it
statements
is.
that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we
God
need
fucking
to do
knows we're all
about
tired
the
of this
housing
bitch.
shortage, which I have a plan for.
That bitch being
Address
Trump.
what we must do to support our small businesses. Address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning.
Dude should probably be in jail for the rest of his life.
It's called weaponization. Never happened.
I believe they used to execute people for treason, actually, you know?
Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then
I have not seen this recent, like, fucking truth social posts or whatever. Thank God.
By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. Now, what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country.
Kind of funny how he has to defend himself about, like, how he's in, like, multiple court cases. It's totally normal for a presidential candidate to have to do. Just everyone just gets a ton of court cases for sexual assault and election interference thrown at them.
The Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
yeah, we do.
to stop him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris.
And if he does try to stop him, he'll have him killed. Just like he tried to do with Pence.
Weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about
No,
me.
you didn't, dude. We don't even think that you actually got hit in the ear anymore.
To democracy with a fake Russia investigation that went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your last run for president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not
question.
changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania.
How would, like, Medicare for all addressed?
I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increased by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about
Yeah, I
lifting
mean, at least
people
there's
up
that. Having
and not
values,
beating
period, puts her
people
ahead.
down and name calling.
I think she has
The true
values,
measure of the
probably.
leader is the
Some.
leader who
Can't have
actually
less than Trump.
understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your response?
First of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built
There's
it
a
into
small
many,
loan of
many
$1 million.
billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies.
Does she support defunding the police? Is that what they just said?
In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar?
What?
She went out in Minnesota.
She was like muttering under her breath, and we couldn't even hear it properly because the mics are off.
Down Minneapolis. She went out and raised money to get him out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do
Not the
this.
transgenders.
She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never
wish she
allow
was
fracking in
radical left.
Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the
Yeah, he's trying to scare the Pennsylvania voters.
When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need
isn't that good?
to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they
What? By the way, wait, that doesn't make any sense.
500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot
are
of
not good
issues
things
that we
for the
have to get
environment
to.
that
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days, and I want to talk about the peaceful.
It doesn't
transfer of
feel
power,
like it's
which,
that
of course, we all
close.
know is a cornerstone of our democracy. And
Fucking like Britain when like
in
shit.
a moment of
Australia,
crisis.
they have like election cycles in like 60, 90 days.
You said you would be
Really
right there with
self-contained.
them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically, and nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the
What
border
is this
czar.
border
She's the one
czar
to be called the
thing
border
he
czar
keeps
because she's
talking
embarrassed
about?
by the
What does
border.
that
In fact, she said
mean?
at the beginning, well, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? What are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world, and crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle, they went into Seattle, they took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle.
Chaz?
When are
I don't
those
think it was
people
a
gonna
big
be
percentage.
prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
Yeah, he didn't say anything about that,
I had nothing
actually.
to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said,
Yeah,
you know,
Chaz, that
this
was
is
a
gonna
funny
be
chapter.
Very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi, but I do want Vice President Harris to respond here.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said,
Stand back and stand by.
So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the
And
outcome.
literally,
And be
and
clear
literally,
on that
literally
point.
attacking.
Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
I wonder what he does if they lose.
That related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity,
what do you mean it's been
all these
debunked?
people,
What?
They covered it. If they go an
does that
extra
mean?
sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked
What was
in almost
perfect?
every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do.
What does that have to do with January 6th?
To do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time.
What?
Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her
Imagine if he just fucking
close
leaves.
up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging?
Yeah, did he say
lost
that?
in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is
one
look
time
at
he
it.
like
And they
admits some
should have sent
truth.
it
It's
back to
a
the
sarcasm.
legislatures for approval.
Of course.
I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in.
What's wrong with that? Oh, it's because he wants the voter ID shit.
They don't even know what country they're in practically, and these people are trying to get them to vote, and that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker, we didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they said we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing?
I wonder what he will do if he loses. I mean,
doesn't have standing. That's how we lost.
It's not as easy because he is in the White House in terms of like a January 6th scenario,
I'll show you
right?
Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
They have put it into decline. We have a nation
that'd be a good conclusion.
Thank you, Vice President Harris. You heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Yes.
Donald Trump was
that should just be a yes. That should be a yes straight up.
So let's be clear about that. And
we can say more
he's
after,
having a very
but
difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders.
Didn't they just have that German parade?
And they say you're a disgrace.
What a bunch of caricatures.
And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did in fact lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
She's been a lot more composed than
Let
Trump.
me just say about world leaders.
So quite a contrast from like with
They call him a
Biden.
strong man. He's a tough person. Smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that, but he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her.
What?
But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I think
up.
we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has
This
a
is
right
an
to
important
defend
one
itself.
for her.
You added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around
The two-state solution? Just leave them there? To fire up again?
And in that
Yeah, okay. There's no real good solution or like anything for us to really do here in the Middle East on this
But the one
subject.
thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran
We just
and
need
its
to
proxies
get the fuck
pose
out
to
of there.
Israel. But we must have a two-state
We
solution
do not need
where we
to
can
be
rebuild
involved.
Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
We're fucked and they're fucked
President
either
Trump,
way.
How would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more
And
innocent
yeah, it is a quite a complex
It would have never started.
situation. It cannot be simply answered.
Ever. I know Putin very well. He would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one.
Have you been? Didn't you say like World War III would have happened by now?
In her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation. And now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect,
you fucking want to give Ukraine over to Russia. It's fucking insane.
Vice President Harris says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have my entire career and life supported Israel and the Israeli people. He knows that. He's trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear.
That is, it is quite the telling sign. Maybe not above all else necessarily, but that every fucking like bad person around the world trying to stir up shit and commit injustices are praying to God Trump wins. Because then they can just fucking roll over whoever the fuck they want. Putin gets at least to win the war.
And she's the one that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing.
And then China looks at that and it's like, Taiwan's looking kind of nice today. Could maybe use that. And then before you know it, then we're fucking in World War III.
Absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened.
I mean, we just let him have Taiwan, but
of other countries think that they're weak and
there's no stopping at that point.
Grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question: why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world, going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way, gets paid a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this historic ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center right here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
All right. I'm going to get a drink and piss. I'll be right back.
Will continue after this.
They flew through the
Alright, let's come back. Let's say hi. Alright. Well, we got 1 minute. Took some medicine, got a drink. There's only 30 minutes left. There's only 20 minutes left. There's supposed to be 2 ad breaks. I kept snoozing the Twitch ad break, hoping that the stream ad break would hit first, but it didn't. Supposed to, I figured it would like have divided it, you know, like one earlier, one later. I don't know when the second ad break is supposed to be at this point. Kamala seems to be doing her job. It's not really a standout performance, I don't think, so far. Seems to be doing solid. Trump's being Trump. Hard seeing this moving the needle much.
Top story with Tom Yamas, streaming weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
We're back with tonight's debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
When it ends in just a few minutes, join us for an analysis of tonight's key moments. Our team will break
when
down
it ends in just a few minutes.
The final sprint to Election Day. For now, though, let's go back to the debate live in Philadelphia.
Live from the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this historic ABC News presidential debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for $250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons.
Ukraine war starting was also a very scary day.
You take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect
does
me. They
Zelensky?
don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left,
jeez, he seems like he's getting pissed off. He seems like he's been pissed off this debate.
It must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III.
Yeah, if you try appeasement.
We don't even know if he's. Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our
He
president?
does, yeah, he does miss Biden.
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to.
He doesn't
stop
care
all
if
of these
Ukraine
human lives
wins or survives or whatever.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Yeah.
I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean.
She ain't wrong.
Because Putin's agenda
and the Republicans have tried like fucking everything they can to make sure that Ukraine gets fucked. They don't want to pass any fucking aid for them. Which is insane. They want to just hand Putin Ukraine. And for what?
The ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Yeah.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow much happier than he is right now. But eventually,
is Putin's happiness what matters here?
He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But
think about
she
that a
does have
lot.
that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the
Putin using
invasion.
nukes is a potential very real threat, but doesn't mean we shouldn't defend ourselves in Ukraine
Again, I said it at the beginning
to
of
our
this debate, you're
fullest
gonna hear a bunch of
ability.
lies coming from this fellow, and that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin.
Trump just wants to be praised by Putin. He just wants to be like a good little dog boy for him. Wants praise.
Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you. Otherwise, we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got
which is pretty crazy.
Donald Trump, when he was president,
I think if it comes to it,
weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal
should
maker. Even his
have
national
troops in
security advisor
Ukraine.
said it
It seems like Europe's going to pick up that slack if needed, but
Afghan government.
We really need to protect Ukraine at all costs. I think the Democrats do realize this and understand this. I think they probably would do that if push came to shove, maybe, likely.
No, get this. And the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David.
And Afghanistan,
Storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance
I don't
of
think there
American
was.
diplomacy, where we invite and
Was it ever going to go cleanly?
respected world
You know?
leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them.
If you want to just call him something else.
Because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to
he does
the point of
not.
how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the
It is also really crazy how the party that's traditionally associated with the military and veterans and stuff, you know, the Republicans are so much worse for them. I guess really, you know, they're worse for like anyone, you know, any supporting group, but still.
Our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers.
Yeah, in Europe, yeah, we are. I was specifically talking on the soldier front. We do still need to be there on financial aid and sending weapons. God hoping Europe would never have to send in troops, and it would never get to the point where we have to send in troops. But we gotta put our foot down on Ukraine.
I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left 85
and we still have Ukraine fighting with their hands behind their back. In terms of how far we're allowing them to go into Russia and use American weapons, and I believe, I can't say that for sure. I'm not sure whether other countries are doing the same thing or not in terms of allowing Ukraine to use their weapons. Because they've started pushing into Russia recently. And they need to.
And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, "I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black." I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate?
It's like the reverse Joe Biden, where it's like, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. Soon enough, every person who votes Democrat are gonna wake up who's gonna be black.
Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that.
He's looking so much like a fucking fool.
And that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States.
Oh yeah, that saga.
People want better than that.
That feels like fucking at the bottom of the list of, Trump's misdeeds, which is insane.
We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying our country, and they come up with things like what she just said. going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they
I don't know what
guilty,
that's
then they
about.
pled
Central
not
Park
guilty.
Five.
But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years
This was
ago,
something
because
pre-presidency.
it's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world.
She was doing
and I'm
some
gonna
good
build it
polls
again. It's
there
gonna be
from
bigger,
his
better, and
pre-presidency
stronger.
stuff based
But
off
they're
of this.
destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this. She is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up,
I
Lindsay.
want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country, one who believes in what is possible.
It doesn't really
one who
feel
brings
like
a
it's
sense of
still.
optimism about what we
It
can
doesn't.
do
If
instead of
anything, I
always
think it is sad
disparaging
that she represents
the American
optimism.
people.
I wouldn't say she
believe
doesn't
in what we
necessarily,
can do to
but it just shows where
strengthen
we're
our
coming
small
from, that
businesses, which
she
why
is the
I have a plan.
optimistic
Let's talk about
hope,
our plans and
where she
and let's
is
compare the
a
plans.
continuation
I have
of
a plan
Biden politics,
to
but
give
a bit
startup
better, I would
businesses
say.
$50,000
But still,
tax deduction.
she has never been
Pursue
anything but
their
a
ambitions,
pretty
their innovation,
establishment
their ideas, their
Democrat.
hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life.
And not a
to help
particularly,
you
like,
in that most critical stage of your child's
interesting,
development.
charged
I have a
one
plan
with like
that is about
accomplishments
allowing
under
people
her
to be able
belt to
pursue
really talk. Like
what has
Tim
been fleeting in
Walz
terms of the
has,
American
I
dream
believe,
by
is
offering
a more interesting
down payment
candidate
of
than she is.
$25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers.
And Gretchen Whitmer would have
That's the
really
kind of
wiped
conversation,
the floor,
believe, David,
I think,
that people really want tonight,
with
as opposed to a
Trump and the
conversation that is
Republicans.
constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page.
Vice President Harris.
And the polls make this evident where it is, they're still close, and there's no circumstance where the polls should be close with Donald Trump in the race.
Plan to confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move
to
on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's what her plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond because
Trump,
no, the
President
former
Trump,
president has said
no, I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're going to move on, Vice President Harris. President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
Correct.
Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something...
Well, he isn't
and we are
necessarily
working on
wrong about
things,
that.
We're going to do it, and we're going to replace it. But remember this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans.
And
if
Senate,
we can come
right?
up with a plan that's going to
2016.
cost our people, our population,
2018.
less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if
You don't do it when you're president. You don't make the plans just when you're president. You don't do the presidency on the fly.
To do that, and you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system.
Thank God.
2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made
private insurance options are good for fucking nothing.
This business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away, so stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate, and the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell people watching tonight, you remember what that was like?
That's true.
Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it. Pass his prologue in terms of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot of...
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve.
That's true. You wouldn't be the one to do it, but
medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion.
I hate how it's being pigeonholed as a young people issue here. I mean, I guess you fucks are gonna die before it gets too bad, but it's a world crisis.
While I have been vice president, we have invested in clean energy to the point that we are.
It feels like it's being diminished a little.
Around the world, Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs, and I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
It didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine.
Yeah, I believe that.
From all of these different countries, and then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
I need some milk. I'll be back.
The ABC News.
Whoa, back again. I think I'm winning this debate personally. I think my poll numbers are gonna go way up because of this. It's just too fucking easy for me. Just make this shit harder. Turn up the difficulty.
Now is raw. How hard is it to see it?
Closing statements. I don't know what I'm gonna do after that.
Now is real.
Let's break down what we know and then the big questions still outstanding.
Maybe that'll be the end of the stream.
Now is NBC News Now.
I am tired.
We're back with tonight's debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
And when it ends, please join us for analysis of tonight's key moments. Our team will break it down as we enter the final sprint to election.
Were there any really key moments? I don't think
Live
so.
From the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Here again, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American
She really
people
likes
know
that
we all
phrase.
have so much more in common than what separates
I can
us.
feel it.
And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve.
I really don't want to vote Democrat.
Our military and ensuring
I
we
voted
have the
for
most
the Green
lethal
Party
fighting
last
force
time.
in the world.
I live in a state where the federal vote doesn't really matter too much.
To make decisions about her own body and not have her
I
government
was thinking
tell her
about
what
doing
to do.
Democrat just as like a extra fuck you to Trump, you know, like an extra vote on top there.
United States Senator and now Vice President. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years.
She has been the vice president. She isn't quite the one who sets the agenda.
To create jobs and all
Oftentimes, it's more of a honorary role.
She done it. She should leave right
Frankly.
now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things.
And
that the
he's
American
saying this
people
like
don't believe in.
he hasn't
You
already been
believe in
president once.
things like
Why
we're not
haven't you
gonna
done this
frack, we're not
shit?
going to take fossil fuel. We're not
The
gonna
shit
do
you're saying.
things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that.
There's quite a
and within 1
contrast
year
from
they were back
Kamala.
to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're
Is he
coming
supposed to
see
be
me.
looking at the
They
camera?
call
Where
me.
has he been looking?
We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential
I mean,
debate
your
from
vice
here
president's the
in
only
Philadelphia,
one in
the
history
National
that I think the
Constitution
president
Center.
has tried to
I'm
get
Lindsay
killed.
Davis.
And I'm David
So
Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world.
his
And
has to have
follow
been
us
pretty
here at
bad,
ABC
right?
News. Good night.
Good night. I didn't listen to your name. Good night, dude.
And welcome back to NBC News coverage of the debate. Pick your adjective. I would go with fiery to begin, but it goes
Fiery?
Both
I don't
the
think
candidates, you could
so.
argue, executing on their strategy going in for Kamala Harris. That was to get under the former president's skin, which she did quite often. For the former president, his option was, of course, to go after the economy, after Afghanistan.
That felt like a fairly bland debate to me. That felt perfectly in line with expectations.
Of course.
At least
This
my
is exactly what they wanted.
expectations.
The question is how they got there and along the way, I think.
Well, people are going to be talking about this debate for a long time. And is this the final debate? Is this
I don't
the
think
only one we're
so.
going to see? Will there be another? Well, it depends on how each candidate feels they did.
I don't
tonight.
know if
Let's go
there's
to our
any,
moderator,
like,
Meet the Press, Kristen Welker, our senior Washington correspondent.
538, I think, does
We have a
live
lot to
polling
talk
about the
here.
debates.
I mean, let's talk about, first of all, it does seem that Kamala Harris was trying to hit every trigger point she could think of to try to get Donald Trump to
Let's
respond
see.
to her and
Did they do
and to kind of fall in to bait him into that trap. Do you think it was effective?
Oh wait, they're owned by ABC News now as well. Did they? Maybe they don't do it anymore. That sucks. I don't know if there's any. I don't know where else would do them. I don't know. CNN? I don't want to watch it. Well, here's like they have like a live blog thing. I don't think they have any live voter reactions and shit though. Trump has spoken 5 minutes long. Really? It's a lot more than I thought. It felt pretty even to me. Yeah, I don't see anything here about it. I guess 538 has gone downhill a little since they got bought out.
Swing voters.
Howie,
That's
what
the
are
question.
Republicans saying tonight that you're monitoring?
I think there's immense frustration on the part of those allied with Donald Trump about the moderators. That is something that you sometimes hear after debates. I think that is certainly a through line here. There is some frustration, I think, I spoke with one Republican who called former President Trump wild and uncontrolled and said that the vice president.
Yeah, I can't imagine this changes polls very much.
Another ally said, listen,
Who's sitting there undecided, like, having watched that debate and being like, oh yeah, well, Trump was clearly awful. Well, you would have already thought that. Or like, Kamala's amazing. Like, Kamala just seemed like a bog standard, like, politician. It's just like, okay, she can speak sentences now. That's good.
She says, my values haven't changed. And it wasn't just,
But
of course, the issue of
we
abortion
already knew
access
she
and
was a
whether he'd
pretty
veto a national
bog
abortion ban
standard
that the former president did not
politician.
answer on.
So,
He did not discuss how he would implement one of his
you know?
central issues on immigration, mass deportations, and he also didn't get into his plan to replace Obamacare, simply saying, I have concepts of a plan. He will be pressed on that moving forward.
He also didn't commit to saying he wants Ukraine to be victorious in the war. So that was an interesting exchange.
yeah, that's insane.
Well, so she was trying to prosecute the case against him, but also present an affirmative vision of herself and what she might do in a term.
And Kamala did like
in the spin room for us. So
a decent job at establishing herself.
Okay, guys,
In
it's
terms,
still
I
very
mean,
early, right? Each campaign is raising
she
their
made
talking points,
her
making
views
sure
more
everyone's on the same
clear.
message before they pour into the
But
spin room.
honestly,
Some people
for
are
me,
coming
it
in right
seemed
now. There's a
like
crush of reporters at the
it's
entrance
just
waiting
more
for everybody. I
clear
can't
she
tell you in the
plans on
meantime, my
continuing the
phone has been
Biden
blowing up.
administration. election. You know, that she isn't really
Democratic strategists, voters. I've been asking everyone
going to be very different. It's just different messenger, if anything.
First debate. After that first debate, Republicans felt very victorious, very confident. They were saying the entire debate was about Joe Biden. This time, it's much different. Republicans seem very frustrated with former President Trump. They also felt frustrated with the format of the debate, which is never a good sign on your side. And then also saying that they were able, at least Vice President Kamala Harris was able to make this debate not about Joe Biden, not about herself, but about Donald Trump, and that led to her advantage. So again, many of the surrogates are coming in right now. Governors, senators from different parties. We're going to be talking.
That's a great pause there. I'll just, that looks better. Wait, no, that's the wrong thing. I think I won the debate. No, I mean, I think we're kind of fucked. I think this is just a bad scenario, right? I don't think Kamala ever should have been fucking picked as the nominee. Thank God that Joe Biden got fucking booted out. He needed to get booted out of the running a long time ago. It is insane it took this long, although I'm surprised the Democrats actually got him out. And that's the only reason we really, like, the Democrats have like a decent chance in November. But it's insane that they have a decent chance and not a locked in against fucking Donald Trump. And this hasn't changed any of that, really. And we're probably not getting another debate, and I don't think we really need one anyway. I mean, what else is there left to really say? I think at this point, it's, rolling with the punches for both of the candidates and seeing what happens. Like it feels like an October surprise is like the only thing that's really left for this election cycle, which probably will happen. Usually does. Everything feels pretty static. Oh yeah. There are a lot of, and those people who are crazy about Trump, they're staying there. He hasn't done any less crazy. He's only gotten crazier and crazier. And if you were going to leave, you would have left. I mean, the endorsements from previous Republican lawmakers and all that shit is nice, is great. And I'm sure that moves some voters. But we're really down to the wire here, the fractions, the decimal places here. And that could and very likely will be important in with certain states. Florida hung on, 500 votes in 2000. Every vote every vote in a swing state does count. But at that point, there's not much national movement or momentum or anything like that, really. Kamala is fairly an unknown on this grand of a stage that it's, as in, she bringing in the primary in 2020, not 2024. So that is, something of a new element. But because she has been the vice president of Joe Biden for the past 4 years, I feel like we'd be at a much more uncertain point if it was someone who isn't Kamala. And sure, the Democrats have made a choice where now we're kind of locked in the odds, but that also means we've locked them in at decent. When we're not going to be able to get anywhere to surefire or better much if they had chosen someone else, like maybe Gretchen Whitmer, or tried to have elections, or had something of a contested convention. And I think they should have done something other than a coronation, but that's what Democrats love to do. They love their coronations. So, the pieces are set. Just kind of waiting for November now. Yeah, I'm tired. I think I'll end the stream here. Thank you for everybody who tuned in for this very enjoyable and insightful debate experience. I think I won the debate. Please make sure to vote Amelia 2024. See my website link and all that. Give me money, political donation. You can, based on laws, you can send me however much you want. So it's chill. You can bribe me. It's okay. It's cool. I accept bribes. If you want me to say I love oil, I will. I'm cool with that. Just give me some money. Thank you. All right. I don't know when the next time I'll be back. It'll be one day. Maybe I'll do another one soon because I'm going to do a chatting one, but we'll see. We'll see. You can fucking follow my Fetty for my insane posts there and shit. So until next time, see y'all.